Друзья, всем привет! С вами Айман Искараева, юрист в Дубае. Сегодня я познакомлю вас с очень интересным человеком. И мы осветим вопрос по получению лицензии для медицинских специалистов, для докторов, для медработников, а также затронем тему открытия медицинского бизнеса на территории Эмират, в частности в Эмирате Дубай. Сегодня мы обсудим важные вопросы, друзья. Очень часто мне задают вопросы о том, как можно получить лицензию доктора, как можно работать, приехать сюда легально, легализовать свой диплом врача, какие экзамены вы пройдете, какой путь у вас будет, какие требования по времени, сколько. И все эти вопросы я буду сегодня обсуждать с одним из очень интересных специалистов, который очень долгое время специализируется на рынке медицинского бизнеса в Дубае. И вы можете задавать свои вопросы, а также досмотреть это видео до конца. Я расскажу о том, как мы могли бы вам помочь сюда переехать и работать здесь врачом по специальности. Мистер Усама, скажите, пожалуйста, как можно получить лицензию доктора здесь и сложно ли это?
Yeah. The license for the doctors in Dubai and Emirates is very straightforward. It's very easy, but it might take time. So let me just say something in the beginning. In the Emirates, there are three major main health authorities. So basically, we talk about Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Ministry of Health that more cover Sharjah and the Northern Emirates. So I'll talk generally. Generally, the process is clear. Anybody who's having the qualification, the experience after qualification can get the license. But usually the main challenge is happening with the documents. All documents need to be attested. And if we are talking about, let's say, anybody from Russia or CIS countries, usually they need to translate the documents, which is very important. So we talk about translation and attestation. Translation need to be in English, no need to have it in Arabic. I notice sometimes some people are translating two languages. One is enough, English is enough. So all documents need to be translated. All documents related to diplomas need to be attested. Of course, no need to attest working experience letter. This would be accepted as is. And if we are talking about surgeon, then we need to have the logbook for the last at least 2 years. This is general, but there are some details related to this specialty or the medical professional. Generally, also we say English proficiency is very important to work in the Emirates. This is a must. And in many cases, if communication is less in English, there might be a challenge to get the license, because everything here, when it comes to the systems and the medical team, everybody will be talking English. So it will be challenging to be, approved to work in an environment if you cannot communicate properly in English.
So, generally, we said three main points: experience, my paper documents, diplomas, everything, and third is very important to be eligible as for English profession. Exactly. Without IELTS, without any exam for IELTS, I don't need to get this exam.
Yeah, IELTS or TOEFL, this is fine. But sometimes if you have a working experience, for example, in English-speaking country, that would be a proof that you are having, let's say, advanced English level. So it's not only about TOEFL or IELTS, it's also showing any record that you practiced, let's say 1 year, for example, somewhere in English-speaking country, that would be a good proof.
Okay. Друзья, как мы отметили в ответе на данный вопрос, очень важны несколько самых главных, скажем, остановимся, аспектов при получении, именно рассмотреть возможность переезда в Эмираты как медицинский специалист. Это наличие вашего опыта работы, не менее 2 лет, наличие вашего образования профильного, которое вы будете легализовывать в установленном законом порядке. И третий важный момент, конечно, ваше соответствие требованиям сдачи квалификационных экзаменов и наличие именно возможность подтвердить, что вы знаете английский язык, умение его использовать в работе на достаточно высоком уровне.
Yeah, 3 notes actually about still the documents. One, usually in the experience, there should not be a gap. This is very important. Usually, if a gap of more than 2 years, it needs really to be justified. You cannot, like any practitioner, have a gap and then come back again to practice. This is very important. So we need to check usually the profile to be sure that the person would be eligible or not. The second thing, one of the documents would be required, so-called the good standing, letter of good standing. This is important to present that the person applying is already registered and licensed and having proper experience or proper practice in their own country. One also very important thing, you cannot get the license if you don't have the license in your own country, or not own country, in the country where you got your education. So let's say somebody is graduated from a certain country and they are not having the license to practice in that country. So it will be very difficult. So usually and logically, you need to have a license in the country that you got your qualification from.
Perfect. So I said no less than 2 years of experience.
2 years experience, this is minimum, like especially if we are talking about now nurses or technicians, usually 2 years experience is the right thing. As for doctors, 2 years also minimum, but of course with doctors we have the issue of the which category. Are we talking about GB, registrar, specialist, consultant? All those the experience will play a factor.
Окей. Следующий вопрос я задам, друзья. Мистер Усама, скажите, пожалуйста, вот я доктор. Если я хочу получить лицензию доктора, я соответствую всем требованиям. Какие мои технические шаги? Что я должна сделать?
Number one, before coming to Dubai, let's say if we are talking about Dubai, before looking for job, be sure that you have the so-called eligibility letter from the DHA. This is very important because you will not have the chance to work with somebody if you don't have this letter. Why? Because as we mentioned, it might sometimes take longer time if the documents are not ready. So no facility, no hospital, or no clinic will accept or will offer employment offer if they are not sure that this person can get the license in a clear period of time. So the first step, usually we say, get the eligibility letter. Work on the license before even approaching anyone. Now, when having the license, yes, at that stage, we can say, okay, it's open market, go check which opportunities are there. And there will be many opportunities for doctors.
Mr. Usama, so for the doctors, we don't need to be hired for some medical hospital, whatever. So I can come to get the license directly without being employed.
Okay. When having the eligibility letter, there is a need to activate the license. This activation needs to happen from a clinic. Now, this clinic, the way doctors and the clinics usually collaborate, is happening either employment, full-time or part-time, sometimes happening on a kind of rental basis, sometimes it's like self-employed doctors, sometimes even we see a kind of joint venture, like, okay, take over a certain clinic and have a kind of collaboration with the owners or with the clinic.
So do you mean possible in both ways? Either I'll come separately as a freelance doctor, if let's say freelance, if I'm not connected with any medical institution. I can come, I'll get approval from the Dubai Health Authority, and or either I'll go to doctors, I will be hired as a doctor, first of all, even without getting license. Then after this, through this, maybe HR managers, they will help me to get license.
You will not be hired as a doctor if you don't have the license. As I mentioned, it's very rare, unless somebody is like having very high qualification and the hospital is sure that this person can get the license quickly. Generally, most of the facilities will prefer to offer the employment for somebody having already the license or the letter for the license. This is the main.
So as per your plan, like it's as per your suggestion, it's better to get, first of all, to get approval, to pass exam. We will talk about exam later on. And so to get exam, to get approved from the Dubai Health Authority, and then after I will find I'm free. I'm free to go to the market and to offer me as
Exactly. When having the letter, there will be many options, as I mentioned. It varies from full employment or part employment or visiting doctor or rent on rental basis or there are different models in the market, and you will find for sure the right opportunity.
Okay.
But the main thing to have the letter. So we always recommend the start need to be not from looking in the market. No, the start need to be from starting the process of the license.
Как получить лицензию? Трудно ли? Какие экзамены мне предстоит сдать? И как долго это времени займет?
Okay. Exam is not the first step. It is follow on the later stage. The main thing in the beginning to have first to be sure that you are eligible for the license. This is very important.
So separate procedure.
Yeah.
To
Yes, to be sure that you are eligible. You need either somebody can assist as a consultant, or maybe if you doctors can do it directly, maybe via DHA, for example, with so-called self-assessment.
Okay.
So in both cases, you will get to know whether you are eligible or not. This is very important. This is the first, because the following steps, when you want to start the application, all documents need to be, as I mentioned, translated and attested. And that's a bit costly, not the procedure. The procedure is it's very reasonable, and the main actually fees for license usually is paid at the later stage when activating the license. But before that, as I mentioned, like having documents attested and registered, that's a bit, there are different steps need to be done, and usually there are some agents doing that. So that might be more costly than the license itself. That's why we say always the first thing need to be self-assessment, which can be either free of charge online, for example, via DHA, or via an agent, just to somebody who can handle your question maybe. This is one thing. Following that, to start the procedure, which should not take long time, but sorry to keep repeating that because this is really a challenge, to have the documents translated and attested. This is a major thing. We notice a lot people sometimes translate one document and start the process, and in the process they are stuck because they have to wait again to have the other documents attested. So what we recommend really to have a kind of agent working on that, because the time saved is huge.
Окей. Большинство людей боится экзамена. И у меня вопрос, трудно ли экзамен сдавать, и какие вопросы, и вообще в целом, где посмотреть?
The exam, if somebody is communicating English, should not, and the specialist, let's say doctors, should not be an issue. Yeah. So we talk about two exams usually. One is like kind of online, and the other one is oral one.
Yeah.
So basically, and not everybody would require the two exams. It all depends on the experience. Like if somebody, let's say, having 20 years experience, maybe after the board, they will not do the first exam. They might do maybe the oral assessment only to be sure that this person, for example, if they are not coming from English-speaking countries, they will only basically check the communication in English. That's it. So basically, the two exams are not the hardest.
Mandatory, yeah?
Yeah. No, they are mandatory, but they are not the hardest if somebody is qualified.
Understand. Okay. Теперь поговорим о зарплатах. Какую зарплату можно получать в Эмиратах, будучи доктором, медицинским специалистом? Насколько они хорошо зарабатывают, скажем так? Могу ли я перевести семью, рассчитывать на то, что буду достаточно высоко оценивая свой труд, очень серьезно, и буду ли я получать соответствующую оплату труда? И хотелось бы еще второй вопрос затронуть о том, что в разных Эмиратах разные ли требования? То есть могу ли я, имея лицензию доктора в Дубае, работать в Абу-Даби или в Шардже или в другом Эмирате?
Yeah, thank you. Basically, as for if somebody is having one license from one of the Emirates and want to work in another Emirate, simply they can apply to convert the license into the other one. So at the moment, it's possible
Easy.
without any complication. So this is a good thing. The other thing now about salaries, it really varies a lot. It depends a lot on the experience, on the qualification, and on the specialty itself. So generally, like when we make any estimation, we always say for specialists, it means that somebody, a doctor who's having a board like based on experience or based on qualification, in certain specialty. So basically, for specialists, usually we say around $10,000 average, but it varies a lot.
Monthly, $10,000.
Monthly, yeah. It varies a lot, really, whether we are talking about a private sector or a government hospital, or working on, let's say, sometime on salary only, or working on a kind of revenue share or some. There are so much details about it, but generally we make the estimation usually $10,000 in case of specialist and around $15,000 in case of consultant. Consultant is the one who's having more than 5 years experience after the specialty.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
So
you. Great.
this is general, but again, it varies a lot. So
Yes,
like some doctors, especially if they are surgeons, for example, and having very good experience, of course, their income is quite high actually. So it varies. Let me say it this. Yeah, in case special inquiry about, let's say, certain experience or something, we can maybe give more details. But this is general.
Подводя итоги, то есть зарплата варьируется в среднем $10 тысяч, это в месяц, но мы опять же не можем сказать, что это будет вот такая сумма, но понятно, что очень много факторов, зависит опыт работы, в какой вы работаете клинике, огромная клиника это или это просто частное, скажем, заведение, медицинское учреждение, поэтому здесь очень трудно оценить, но в среднем при хорошем таком бэкграунде можно получать зарплату от $10 тысяч и выше, и даже более того можно получать $15 тысяч, если мы говорим об опытных специалистах, к которым относятся люди с опытом работы не менее 5 лет. А также то, что вы можете, получив однажды квалификацию, лицензию доктора в одном из Эмиратов, соответственно, менять ее достаточно просто. Ну, разумеется, там нужно будет пройти определенные требования, соответствие определенным стандартам, и после этого вы можете, в принципе, поменять Эмират и работать в другом Эмирате. Итак, друзья, мы поговорили о специалистах-докторах. Друзья, это была основная информация. Мы сейчас, когда разговариваем с мистером Усамой о том, какие особенности существуют для различного типа клиник, если у вас необходимо определенное оборудование, если у вас будет рентгенаппарат, либо у вас будет УЗИ-аппарат, какие требования для завоза, ввоза, какой вид бизнеса, если это стоматология или это лаборатория. То есть очень много разных деталей, которые мы в этом видео просто вы утомитесь, если мы будем это вам освещать, если это тем более вас не касается. Поэтому, если у вас есть желание, возможности открыть этот бизнес в Эмиратах, то обращайтесь, мы отдельно вас проконсультируем по этому вопросу и, конечно же, будем рады вам помочь. А если у вас есть вопросы, задавайте в комментариях, либо непосредственно у меня есть размещены мои данные, контакты, можете обращаться непосредственно, и я вас свяжу с мистером Усамой, который отдельно вас проконсультирует по вашему конкретному вопросу. Спасибо, мистер Усама. Очень была познавательная беседа, очень много информации у вас можно еще, я чувствую, узнать, но я думаю, что здесь уже по каждому виду бизнеса мы не можем пройтись. И спасибо за ваше время, спасибо за помощь, и будем на связи. Буду отправлять вам, если будут клиенты, друзья, кто хочет открыть здесь бизнес.
Thank you. Thank you.
Друзья, с вами была Айман Яскараева, юрист в Дубае. Обращайтесь, подписывайтесь на мой канал. Предложение давайте свои, о какой сфере вы бизнеса бы хотели, чтобы я вам находила специалистов и вела интервью время от времени, чтобы мы могли вам облегчить путь начала вашего бизнеса в Эмиратах. Спасибо всем за внимание.